Even 5 weeks after the election, Democrats are still straining for excuses to explain why their candidate lost to the guy from The Apprentice. This week's fixation is another phase of Russia mania. Now it's taken as indisputable fact that Russian state actors hacked the election to install their preferred candidate, Donald J. Trump. But notwithstanding the recent upsurge of Kremlin trickery lunacy, Clinton loyalists seem to have settled on one explanation in particular as the principal reason for their historic defeat. James Comey robbed them. Brian Fallon, the Clinton spokesperson, reiterated this view just today in a Politico article on the campaign's laughably catastrophic strategic decisions, claiming James Comey was responsible for the number drop in the final weeks, thanks to his shocking letter to Congress. When asked to identify the central reason for Hillary's loss in a Politico podcast this week, the partisan surrogate David Brock said the following.
Hillary Clinton is one of the most honest, ethical politicians in America. Comey stole the election from Hillary with the 2 letters.
So that's the working premise for much of the liberal establishment. Hillary's campaign strategy was otherwise on the money, and were it not for malicious intervention of Comey, it would have worked. They strongly, stridently believe this, as apparently does Hillary herself. It's taken as a given in these circles that Comey's motivations were fundamentally foul, and that he interfered improperly with the conscious intent of undermining Hillary. But there's almost no evidence to back up this belief. Many of the same people now apologetic at Comey were praising him after he rendered his initial decision on July 5th to not recommend charges against Hillary.
How Democrats talked about James Comey before Friday. Here it is.
There was an extensive, as you know, Brett, investigation by the FBI under the direction of a wonderful and tough career public servant, Jim Comey.
This is a great man. We are very privileged in our country to have him be the director of the FBI.
No one can question the integrity, the competence.
And he's somebody with the highest standards of integrity.
I'm going to continue to be scrupulous about not commenting on it, just because I think Director Comey could not have been more exhausted.
A few moments later.
She would have won this election without any problem if Comey had not been the Republican operative that he is.
Firstly, Comey didn't sit on explosive information until the most electorally critical juncture so he could deal Hillary a fatal blow. He received information in late October because the information coincidentally came in at around late October due to external events. And what was the external event in question? The commencement of an FBI criminal investigation into Anthony Weiner's alleged unlawful communications with a minor. Who oversaw the investigation into Anthony Weiner's alleged sex crimes? Not James Comey, but Preet Bharara, the Obama-appointed U.S. attorney who has taken down powerful politicians in both parties. The seizure of Weiner's computer equipment occurred within his New York jurisdiction. Bharara is the one who authorized the investigation, which was first reported on September 22nd. So the idea that this all came about solely as a result of some internal right-wing coup just doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Are there certain factions within the FBI that are right-wing? Of course, but that's always been so, and in this case, they wouldn't have been the ones calling the shots. Now, it's true that some of the steps taken in the Hillary criminal case were unusual. Rather than simply announcing that no charges would be brought, Comey made a televised statement on July 5th in which he laid out all the reasons Hillary acted in an extremely careless fashion and potentially even violated statutes. In virtually every other criminal case, we would not want someone who is being absolved from prosecution to nonetheless be publicly condemned by law enforcement officials. But in the case of a leading presidential candidate, the standards simply must be different. Voters are entitled to the maximum amount of information, and if the FBI director possesses information that could inform their decision-making, he has an affirmative obligation to provide it. Hillary was not a mere private citizen. She was seeking to become the occupant of the most powerful office on the planet. It's also unusual for a major political party to nominate a candidate with such severe, unresolved legal problems, so we would have expected some unusual circumstances to spring from that. Comey didn't force Anthony Weiner to possess materials relevant to a high-level criminal investigation on his personal computer, and he certainly didn't force Weiner to allegedly sex with minors. He also didn't force Hillary and her staff to destroy government records.
They destroyed BlackBerries with hammers in the State Department. That's not what one the president said.
Actually,
and
Evan,
hold
on. Can you fact check that? Hang on, Evan Perez. Hammers, fact check that for me, please, on the fly. Yes, they did.
When Comey made his initial announcement on July 5th, he explicitly noted that the FBI had not been able to recover the entirety of relevant materials. FBI investigative notes explicitly mentioned that there were other devices out in circulation containing materials that the FBI had not been able to review. So there was always a possibility that new evidence could come to light, causing the investigation to once again become active. Comey was always exceedingly clear about this, and that's crucial. Comey repeatedly pledged to Congress that he would appraise them of any changes in the status of the investigation. He made these pledges in official sworn testimony. The unrelated Anthony Weiner investigation produced new materials pertinent to the Hillary email server investigation, which had been inactive as of July 5th. As of October 28th, the status of the investigation changed from inactive to active, and at that point, Comey had an affirmative obligation to notify Congress, or as Newsweek put it on the day the letter was issued, he didn't have a choice. Democrats and Democrat-allied media personalities condemning Comey generally insist that he ought to have concealed this information from the public, in direct contravention of his sworn congressional testimony, rather than fulfilling his pledges and provide it. Hence, their view is essentially against transparency, that Comey was wrong to disclose to the public significant information about our presidential candidate's criminal liabilities, and instead should have withheld it because of the potential detrimental impact it would have had on the candidate's electoral prospects. Of course, they never would have invoked such logic had Trump been in the same position. They would have demanded that the FBI release all relevant information at once, so their objection is grounded in pure partisan gamemanship. What else could have Comey done? Refuse to testify before Congress in the first place? If that's your position, you're arguing for a reduction in transparency and government oversight. It's certainly odd for Democrats to proclaim that the FBI should not have been subject to congressional scrutiny, or that they should have been permitted to operate in greater secrecy. I have no special affinity for Comey. In truth, I think the FBI, along with the CIA, should simply be abolished. But that doesn't mean that Comey acted improperly given the circumstances. Scapegoating him for Hillary's loss makes no sense, but it's all her aggrieved supporters have left.